So let's start with the basics of text file input output. First of all, we are going to be importing a couple of things. Because we will be working with files and we will be reading them and writing, so creating them, we will use the OS library. This is a Python library that communicates with my operating system. While we are in Colab, we are working in the operating system of the Colab machine, that one you have there, for example. Why can't here you have the characteristics of that machine, okay? And this machine runs over a Linux operating system, It doesn't matter if you were running Python code in your own machine. It doesn't matter if that machine is a Windows machine or a Mac, which essentially is basically a Linux or a proper Linux machine. This OS library will help us to communicate with whatever operating system we have. So when we say store this file, this OS library, or give me the files in one particular folder, this folder will do this library, this OS library will do different things depending on what system I am, but I don't have to worry about them. This library is precisely to so that I don't need to worry about what particular operating system I'm working on. We will also use our old friend the randint library to generate some random numbers, okay? Let's start, because we don't have a file at the moment, let's start by creating one. And in order to create a file, we're going to have to write to it, okay? In order to create a file that we can write to, and in order to read from a file to later, we will use the open function, okay? Open is a function that's built in Python, and it allows us to, as it says, open a file. For example, we need the open word, then we need this parenthesis, the name of one file, and then the mode that we want to use. And this can be several things that we will see later. The first one that we are going to use is W, which means that we are going to write to this file, okay? There are many more ways to open a file, and you can check them here. Yes, I'm being redirected, and here you have all of them, okay, if you want to check them. But let's stick now with the write option. In this case, I am importing the operating system and randint as we saw before, and I'm using this open. I'm giving my file a name, cool file name.txt, and EW. And I'm assigning the result of this to something called a file handle. So these file handles will be the variables that I will use to handle, to work with my files. For those of you reading ahead, this is actually an object from a class, but let's just say at this moment that this is a file handler, a variable, and we will deal with objects and classes later in the object-oriented programming course, okay? So just with open, I create this variable that will help me work with file. And very importantly, once I have run this code, as I am doing now, and I have opened a file, okay, when I open a file, I usually need to also close it, okay? So if you open with this, you also have to end up closing it, because if you don't, bad things can happen with your code, okay? So usually open is always coupled with a close, okay? But when I opened a file for writing, even though I didn't do much of anything, I can see in the hard drive of my Colab machine that I have created this file called cool file name. If I make another one called cool file name 2 and I update this, I will see it here too, okay? So I already know how to create files in the hard drive on my computer. This is simple. If I click it, text file that's empty, that doesn't have anything at all in it, okay? So it's a little bit boring that our file doesn't have anything at all in it, isn't it? Let's write something to it, okay? In particular, what we are doing is that we are opening the file and we're using a for loop here, fixed number of iterations, and for 5 iterations what I'm going to do is write to my file. Using the file handle variable, I write the name of my variable to handle files dot and then the write operation, and then I can write to my file. And I'm generating a random integer between 1 and 10, creating a string out of that, and then using the line separator of my operating system. And that's different from the operating system, but basically this is a return character, however it's encoded in my operating system, okay? And then let's also write some strings, general strings. So I'm writing 5 random numbers between 1 and 10 here, and then some sentences. One that he comes home, blah, 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 blah. Okay, and one line separator. So each of these things is in one particular file. As I have already run the code by pressing here, then I can come to my cool file name and see that I have generated 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and then these sentences. If I run the code again and update this, then I see that I have different numbers and same sentences. So this effectively overrides different numbers, the same sentences. Each time that I open this with the W mode, I'm overwriting whatever was before in the file. Okay, so the W mode allows me to write things to a file, and I'm overwriting everything. If you don't want to overwrite, you need to change the mode in which you open. Okay, you can change this easily with the append mode. So if we do this with append and run it again, what we get now is sorry, I haven't checked the right one. I haven't changed the right one. These things happen with coding. If I change to the append mode and run it again, then what I get in my cool file name is first the result of the first execution, then the result of the second execution. Okay, how to write to file? Usually we will use the write flag, the write mode. If you want to use other modes, you can check them in these references, or you can Google them. But for example, the A mode, the append mode, writes to file without overwriting what was there before.